Hello, everybody. Thank you guys for tuning in, watching, listening. This is Justin Stivers, another episode of the Stivers Show. Very excited about my guest today, Margaret Barrett, owner of Safe Harbor Estate Law, all the way up in cold Minnesota. Margaret, what's going on?
You're right. It's a little too chilly already, Justin, and I am I haven't been running enough because I don't want to go out in the cold, and it's only about 30, which is not that cold here. But um, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I forget that, because we're at like 85 degrees, and I forget the rest of the world is cold elsewhere. So my apologies, my apologies. Uh,
Oh,
but
you're
very,
right on.
yeah,
We've
very, very.
already had snow, and as we were saying before we started recording, Minnesotans are very fond of Florida. It's the most favorite place for Minnesotans to go in the winter. And so yes, when I think Florida, I think warm, just like you think Minnesota, you
Yeah,
think cold.
I get it. Well, I'm excited to have you on here. I know you are a fantastic estate planning, elder law, probate attorney up in Minnesota. We've had the chance to do a little bit of stuff together. And so I know we got a lot of cool things to talk about today, but maybe best place to start. I'll just, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you. And thanks for the compliment. So I have been an attorney since 1991, but I started my estate and elder law firm 7 years ago, Safe Harbor Estate Law. We serve Minnesota and Wisconsin. We have two attorneys. I have 7 staff besides me. And I started my firm because I got tired of seeing the effects that happen to people when they don't plan or don't have a really good plan for when they become ill or passing away. So we help people plan to pay for long-term care and have the government help if you run out of money. And we help people plan for when they pass away or get ill to make sure the documents are in order. What we say is we empower families to protect what matters most to them. And what we find what matters most to them is their loved ones, their own care, like getting good care and the health care they want, and then their hard-earned money. They want it to go where they want it to go, and they actually want it to benefit the people. They don't want to leave behind a mess and a hassle for their loved ones. Most people, you've worked really hard to live a good life and take care of your family, and you don't want to leave a bad taste in your mouth at the end. And so that's what we help people do, really protect what matters most to them.
That's awesome.
And I have, personal reasons that motivated me to get into this field. I've had painful, hard, hassle situations in my life. And so I really want to help my clients, put their head on the pillow at night and know that they've done everything they can to make things go smoothly.
Yeah, I know, and you don't have to share if you don't want, but I would encourage people to go to your website because you do have some very heartfelt stories of, why you got it, or I guess why you do this. Are the stories what led you into this type of law?
It was partly, I saw the need, and I was, when I started my firm, I was, about 50. I was starting to get concerned about my parents, and I wanted to know more about how I could help them and what they needed to have in a row. So as I started learning about that, I realized, like me and everyone else my age, is concerned about our parents and our own affairs. And so it was personal that way. And then my first husband died at 39 in a car accident, but we were divorced. Okay. But still we had kids together. And so that's my biggest story on my website. People can see more about it, but it was shocking that he died. And what happened was worse. There was 7 years of litigation. It went to the Minnesota Supreme Court. And the bottom line was that he went to an attorney who did a little estate planning on the side. It was his divorce attorney, and he screwed up. It wasn't properly signed. That was his prenuptial agreement. And secondly, he was going through a second divorce, and it wasn't updated for that. So my kids, they're growing up where years were kind of dominated by this messy estate. And he tried to do the right thing. He had an estate plan at 39. I mean, that's ahead of most people. But I really don't want to see other people go through that. So So that, yeah, the combination of really wanting to help people avoid what I went through and be proactive. And now I'm in a blended family. It's super important for blended families to plan to minimize the hassle. You know,
You
the
may-
last thing you want is your spouse and your kids fighting after you're gone. And I always say, I'm not a magician and I'm not God. I can't promise it won't happen. Well, we can help you do everything we can to avoid it.
Well, you kind of make an interesting point that, your first husband took all the right steps to try to get this done, and it still didn't really work out. And I know it, kind of sounds like maybe that attorney failed him. How does how does a person really know? How do you really know whether or not that attorney knows what he or she is doing, and then whether or not what you think is going to happen is actually going to happen?
That is a great question. I'm glad you asked it. And by the way, we did get a malpractice claim against that attorney, and it was a slam dunk. And we recovered. I think his coverage was, I don't remember how much his coverage was, but anyway, they paid out the maximum. But that's the best you can do at that point. It doesn't repair even relationships if people still don't talk to each other 20 years later. So I have a free resource. I'm glad you reminded me. If you go to our website, it's safeharbororestatelaw.com/10, the number 10 questions. And that's where we have a download that is 10 questions to ask an estate planning attorney that you're interviewing. So, we're in Minnesota, Wisconsin. We're actually hoping to open an office in Florida since we have so much connection there. But this is for anybody in the country, or if you're an advisor and you have, you just want to coach your clients and help them. These are some good questions to ask.
Okay, awesome. That's a great resource, because I'm sure a lot of people, there's so many attorneys, there's so many people doing, like you said, maybe doing this type of work on the side. And I think, maybe the consumer might think, oh, okay, well, I signed this piece of paper. It says it's a will, it says it's a trust, whatever, I'm covered. But you really might not know that everything was done properly. So I think that would be a great resource.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or they do it online. And another thing is, and this, Justin, I know that the documents need to be right and they need to be signed right, but then the assets need to line up with the documents. And this is where it falls apart a lot. People have a trust, but they never get the assets in the trust, or the beneficiary designations are wrong. And people don't realize that how the assets are titled or who the beneficiary is can override perfectly good paperwork. So we try to do, we call it the smooth sailing system I created to help people with these processes, to try to walk them through step by step so it's not overwhelming. So a big part of our process is, after the documents are signed, we really want to make sure that assets are lined up with it. And that's one of the things to look for in an estate planning attorney. And you also want someone who's really going to listen to you and ask questions and understand your goals and concerns and be thorough.
Yeah. Well, I want to shift somewhat a little bit, because, like what you were saying, I know you all work in Minnesota and Wisconsin right now. Thinking about Florida, because at this time of year, everyone in Minnesota wants to get the heck out of Minnesota.
That's right.
And I know we've had the opportunity to try to do some stuff together. And there's definitely, I know from working with attorneys up north, that there's definitely a lot of snowbirds, a lot of people moving down here, or having buying a summer vacation, a winter home, some vacation home, something like that. And that does affect their estate plan. And I think that's one of the assets that you just don't really think about, right? I see that a lot. Maybe someone did their estate plan way back when. They, everything in their home state is good. The house is titled under the trust or whatnot, but then they go buy a condo in Boca or whatever, and they just, they forget about that one. And now the kids who live in Minnesota have to hire an attorney in Florida to get this house, and no one knows what they're doing. So can you maybe talk a little bit about how that, I guess, if you see that and how that comes into play?
Sure, that's a great question, and that we see that all the time. It's very common in Minnesota or the northern Wisconsin in the north. People want to have a place in the winter, maybe a condo, a timeshare, a house, something, a regular place to go and spend time. We have a number of people who contact us, and they're already spending more than 6 months of the year in Florida, and they consider themselves residents. anyway, and other people don't, or they think they may move there or move back. We had a new client the other day hired us, and actually it was somebody I already knew. And I said, well, okay, as you get older, when you're only going to be in one place and you can't travel anymore, where are you going to be? And they said, well, if he dies first, Minnesota, if she dies first, Florida. So like, okay, so we kind of got to plan for both. And that's where people are at, right? Sometimes you kind of got to plan for both, and we can do that. But what is the first thing I'd say that's most helpful if you're thinking about having property out of state or you do have it, is having a trust, a living trust or revocable trust. It's the same thing. So you want to have the trust to hold the Florida property and the Minnesota, Wisconsin property. You know, I have clients with a cabin in Wisconsin, a house in Minnesota, and a condo in Florida, right? If you have a trust, a Minnesota trust, it doesn't matter, Wisconsin, wherever you live, put all the assets in the trust, then you avoid the probate. Because you could potentially then have 3 probates in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Florida. And what's a Florida probate would cost with real estate, Justin? Like, what would you say?
It depends, but several thousand
Yeah, at least.
dollars. Yeah.
So Minnesota, we usually say, we'll figure on 5,000 probably. So it's cheaper to have a trust than have a probate. So that would be a key thing. Do you have any comments or?
Well, do you think that, so I think a lot of people, and I was actually having this conversation with someone earlier, do you think they need, in your opinion, to have a quote unquote estate plan in every single state that they have something, or no?
No. Occasionally people need like a healthcare directive or a power of attorney in both states. So what we like to do is partner with an attorney in Florida, especially if people are spending more than half their time there. Minnesota, if you have any ties to Minnesota, they have like a really long arm statute. And we have an estate tax at $3 million right now. Does Florida have an estate tax?
No.
Not at all. So Minnesota wants all the money they can get. And there's
everybody's
21
leaving.
Huh?
Everybody's leaving. That's why.
No, we got to pay with all the snowplows.
Yeah.
So, there's a 21 factor test. So people will come and say, but I spend more than 6 months in Florida. We're like, yeah, I know, but that's one of the 21 factors. It's like, where do you go to the doctor? Where's your bank at? They have a long arm. So it's risky that you might be pulled into Minnesota. But anyway, so sometimes what we do when it makes sense is we work with a Florida attorney and just say, hey, I think the Minnesota documents make the most sense here. Please look them over. And so we do occasionally have people, have a power of attorney and healthcare directive in Florida, but we use Wealth Counsel, and that's I think a premier national drafting software. So our documents tend to work well in other states more easily because they're drafted nationwide with state adjustments. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you found that same thing, Justin? Have you?
We use Wealth Counsel. Yeah, we use Wealth Counsel as well. We use Wealth Counsel as well. Yeah.
Right. And you do occasionally see clients with like power of attorney in 2 states or something.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, we try to keep it as simple as, try to keep it as simple as possible at the end of the day. We don't want 20 different sets of documents and then someone pops up and they've got a set that was created. We try to keep it as simple as possible.
We do too. And normally that's a good point. And normally that's all you need, but in certain situations we'd look at it. If you're aging or not completely well and you're spending 6 months in Florida, we want to make sure the power of attorney and the healthcare directive will work well for you there. So
is there anything specific that any advice or any counsel that you give to people looking to have, when they're talking about doing estate planning and having assets in different states? I'm just curious if there's anything, someone should be aware of. I mean, I know you said if there's real estate, make sure you put that in a trust, but is there anything else that you maybe recommend?
Yeah. So I would work with an estate planning attorney in the state where you're spend the most time probably. It's a good place to start. And then all states will have this determination of what state they think you're in. In Minnesota, we call it the 21 factor test. So if you were doing an estate plan with us and you had Florida property, we would definitely be looking at the 21 factor test. So we could let you know. And if you have over $3 million, it's super critical because you're subject to estate taxes. And in Minnesota, estate taxes vary but it's roughly 10% on the amount over 3 million. So if you have 4 million, that's $100,000. So it's definitely worth the time to look at this 21 factor test and see where you would be. And then we'll also ask you about your plans for the future. And, are you planning to move to Florida permanently or here or whatever? So we can help you get the best plan. So the tax planning is definitely part of it, determining what state your documents should be. And then, having the trust to get your assets in there is important.
Have you seen any change with the current situation, COVID, and Florida is definitely a hot spot for that? I mean, is that a conversation that you and your clients are having about, them relocating or COVID in general? Has that affected your all's practice either positively, negatively, more people thinking, hey, we need to get some documents in place because of this virus, or same kind of, I don't know, carefree attitude when it comes to planning?
That's a good question. So I think COVID is such a painful reminder that we're not in control and we just don't know. And so when it first started, I thought we'd have more of a rush to do estate planning, but I think it's pretty steady. I mean, we're still growing, but I think people are overwhelmed, Justin, and there's so much stress and it's easy to put things off. So, it's been steady, the estate planning, but I think that still, it's just a stressful situation for people. So that we see more stress. And so we're just really trying to be more supportive, help things be clearer. For instance, I've heard people's attention spans are shorter now because we just don't have the bandwidth. And we're worried about, well, am I having a Zoom Thanksgiving this year or what? You can't even have Thanksgiving. So, so we're trying to actually do shorter videos, trying to do shorter materials for people to make it just easier to tolerate with all the stress that's here. And just trying to meet them where they're at with the concerns they have. As far as COVID, so some people are, like say they'd stay in Florida longer and rather than go back and forth. We've seen that, but also people are much more comfortable with Zoom and doing things online. So we're doing a lot more of that with people. And in our office, we have plexiglass shields. Of course, we have masks, but when we're behind the shields, we feel comfortable taking them off if the client wants us to, because it can be hard to understand what we're talking about with the masks. So we feel like we've pivoted and, like everyone says, and have accommodated things to drive-by signings and doing things on Zoom. And we're just really trying to continue to help people. We can do signings at their home, send a messenger who's a notary to sign.
Yeah, that's great. Because I think you used to do a lot of in-person seminars, right? If I remember correctly. Yeah,
I did a couple a month.
Yeah, you did several. Has that, obviously those have probably gone by the wayside. I'm not sure. And how has that affected you?
I haven't done one since March. So that's another learning curve for me. I've been learning how to be doing the webinars more effectively. So I do those probably a couple a month. And there's on my YouTube channel, there's some, and I did a bunch of 2 to 3 minute videos, 14 of them, I think. And we're just trying to do more videos because people find them helpful. And the webinars, I think it's harder to connect personally. It's harder, I think, to help people feel comfortable. But we just really work on that, and we've definitely had some success with them.
That's awesome. Definitely interesting times, and like you said, everyone's having to pivot, find new ways of providing the services, getting the information out there, and then on the other side, the customer, the consumer, what are they comfortable with doing, right? So what are they? Do they want to come into the office? Not want to come into the office? It's interesting. It's very interesting.
It's interesting because now it's very easy for us to serve the whole state like you do at both states. And now we're finding more of the younger professional people are coming to us because they're totally comfortable doing it over remotely. We had one woman call during the pandemic, like it was maybe April or May when things were really shut down. And she was in Duluth, which is like 2.5 hours away. And we said, no problem. We'll get this signed up there for you. We can do it. She said, oh no, I'm driving down. And I totally got it. Cause she might just want to get out of the house and have a change of scenery and come down and see us.
That was a highlight of her month.
Hey, Justin, I had clients, they moved to Minnesota in June. Their son, like middle-aged son, surprisingly died in May. They moved to Minnesota and they were in my office like a month ago. We did the review meeting and they wanted to do it in person. We sat down behind the plexiglass and had a great meeting. And I was like, thank you. You ended up to be 2 hours. They had lots of questions and lots we talked about. Like, you did a great job sticking with me. And they go, you're the first person we've talked to like this since we moved to Minnesota. We in our building, we don't get to talk to people. We don't get to see our kids very much. It's so sad, Justin.
Yeah.
So I was glad we were able to give them some human connection. That was really positive.
I think we're all feeling the fatigue to some degree or another. But
Mhm.
well, I know we're coming up on our time, and I really appreciate it. I do want to ask though, is there anything, especially in I guess our type of work, we see how important it is for people to have these documents in place, and it's not just, hey, we want to do it, we want the business. I mean, you again have firsthand experience with that. Is there anything what do you tell your potential clients or people on the fence to say, hey, listen, this, you really need to get this done, or any parting words, advice for people thinking about they want to get this done?
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I know there's extra stresses with COVID. I get it, but it is a reason, all the more reason to get your documents done. We are getting calls from family in crisis now more than ever because Val broke her hip. She's in a facility. She doesn't have any papers. We're in crisis. And on top of it, I don't know if I can get in the building to meet with her. The Zoom doesn't, I mean, it's so much harder. And I see it, especially with the families, it's very stressful and it does end up costing more. And then if you don't have the papers in order and the unexpected happens, then if it's too late, you have to go to court, and court involves guardianship, conservatorship is at least $5,000. And so I really urge people, I know it's probably doesn't seem like the most fun thing you'd ever do,
It's
but
not.
I just take the first step and make the phone call, download this free report, safeharbororestatelaw.com/10 questions. You can Google attorneys in your area, ask your advisor, another attorney you own, a realtor, somebody that who do you know around here that's a good estate planner? And just make the first call. I mean, we do it every day. We can walk you through it once you reach out. That's all you need to do. And then it's the most loving gift you could give your family for Christmas is to have your estate plan in order.
Awesome. Well, what's the best way for people to reach out and get in contact with you?
They can go to safeharbororestatelaw.com, or our phone is 612-615-9535. I'm on LinkedIn, Margaret Barrett, Barrett, for the professionals or who wants to look. Yeah, we'd be happy to help. And if you're in a different state, I mean, you can ask, we'll refer you to somebody in another state. I'm sure Justin can do the same thing. We try to stay connected.
Yeah. Well, Margaret, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. A lot of knowledge, a lot of good stuff there. And hopefully we'll be seeing you in Florida here soon.
That's right.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye.